You guys are doing that real quick, just for a show of hands in here, how many people in the room have either put on or gone to a multi-course paired beer dinner? Okay, a few people, not very. All right, so what we're going to work through here is how to evolve the palate, how to not tire the palate, how to keep things entertained, and also how to not get stuck into common pairings. Couple things you'll see in here is we don't have stout and chocolate, we don't have IPA and roast meat. We're moving things around quite a bit on the palate, and the idea is to keep highlighting different areas of the palate so that you don't hit palate fatigue and you move through a meal pretty seamlessly. We'll dive right into it. So the first thing, you're going to work left to right just like a book, except for, well, maybe not all of you. So the first thing you're going to go with is going to be a little bit of an amuse bite. It is the ricotta that's on the toast with a little bit of English peas, some caramelized honey. This is going to go with the Victory Prima Pills. So while we're all doing this, cheers to all of you. There we go, a little bit. So the way you should do this is beer, food, beer. Take a sip of the beer. As you do that, breathe in. Taste what's happening on your palate, get what's happening in the back of your throat, take a bite of the food, immediately after swallowing, take another sip of the beer, and breathe in again. That's going to give you a sensory reaction that happens on the roof of your mouth and around. This is kind of a palate cleanser. Victory Prima Pills is a great beer to start people off with. It doesn't affect your palate. It's lower alcohol. It focuses on a single noble hop for a flavor profile and goes quite well with the ricotta and the English peas. A little bit of honey in there to balance with the malt. So you'll see some tie-ins here. The English peas should pull to the hops. You should get a little bit of bitter to the English pea. You should get a little bit of sweetness with the honey to the sweetness of the malt. And then the ricotta is there to kind of protect the palate as you move through the pairing. So as we're going through this, kind of the basics of pairing. Build intensity. Everything we just started off with is really, really small. Doesn't overtake the palate. Should be refreshing. There's three main types that you can interact on a palate. One is to do a cut, a contrast, or a compare. So what we're doing right now is a very gentle compare. We're taking the little sweetness that's in the malt, we're taking the herbal notes and the hops, and we're lining them up with the peas and the ricotta just to set you guys up for what's coming next. Okay? The next pairing we're going to go into is kind of moving around a little bit. What we're talking about here is the very common pairing of oysters and stout, or in this case, oysters and porter. Commonly, a lot of chefs and a lot of restaurants will use porters and stouts in terms of desserts. And one of the trends that we're seeing lately is that craft brewers are asking for these beers to be paired with something other than chocolate. When you pair a porter or a stout to chocolate, yes, you get a great pairing, but all you're doing is pairing the chocolate of the malt to the chocolate of the chocolate. You're not challenging the palate. In fact, you're actually tiring the palate, and you're not doing the beer the full justice you should for what should happen to the hops in there, the roast of the different malts, and the complexity that it takes to make a low alcohol porter or a stout, such as the Black Butte Porter from Deschutes. So the hardest pairing to execute is a contrast, because you have to push the palate to the left and to the right, but yet come back to center at the end. We're going to do that here for the second course with the Black Butte Porter and an oyster. This is a Jersey oyster from the Borough Market. These guys were awesome to hang out with for a little bit the other day. We shucked just a little bit ago. And then to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of fat to it, there is a pork skin mignonette on there that has a little bit of vinegar. So again, you're going to go beer, then you're going to do oyster, and then you're going to do beer. You're going to get the acid and the salt from the oyster pulling in all of the hops and the different malts that are in this beer versus if you went to chocolate. So I want you to think about that as you taste this, because the common pairing here is chocolate. So think about chocolate in your head a little bit and what you would taste versus what you're actually tasting when you do this with the oyster. While I'm on that, I do have to make the requisite food allergy warning. Should anyone in here be sensitive to shellfish, dairy, gluten, wheat, or nuts, you're at your own risk for this menu. So now your palate should be starting to be awake a little bit more, moving along. You're starting to feel it on the sides, but you're not overworked yet. Is everybody tasting a little bit of smoke coming in, a little bit of burn in the back of their throat from that? The salt from the oyster awakens your palate a little bit more from the first course. You no longer taste the ricotta that was coating your tongue. You've got a little bit of brininess going on. You've got a little bit of the roast happening. So what we're doing is we're entertaining different parts of the palate so that you don't have fatigue. If you were to expand each of these dishes, you would be enjoying a 6-course paired beer dinner. And by the end of it, you're not going to feel tired. The biggest complaint from guests going to craft beer dinners right now is at the end of it, they feel bogged down, satiated, tired. They can't taste the last courses. It's our job to keep people entertained through a dinner and challenge them with new things. So as we move into what would be the second course, we're going to go into a classic ESB or amber. This is from Saugatuck Brewery in Michigan, sorry. What we're doing here is a carrot. Very classically speaking, an ESB or an amber is a great pairing with a steak. There's a reason for that. There's in culinary world and also in the brewing world, there's a chemical reaction that happens called the Maillard reaction, which is when you heat proteins to an extremely high heat and you have a transfer over, and that's what causes the color caramel to appear. This happens in the process of kilning grain for beer and also in the process of cooking proteins. One of the great things about using a carrot is it naturally mimics a Maillard reaction by a little bit of barley and quinoa that's been toasted off in there as well too to provide some texture. And then this is just kind of gently finished with some sea beans, and that's going to act as a natural salt. That salinity is going to bring out a little bit of a pop in the herbal hops at the end there. So if you save the little sea bean towards the end of your bite and then drink a little beer with that, you'll get a really lovely pop. And again, as you're going through this, you're not seeing that your palate is getting worked over. You're still nice and relaxed. Your stomach's not full. You don't want to leave and go somewhere else and get a pizza yet. As you guys are resetting here, we need to start going into the next 3 beers. So we have the La Folie Sour Brown, which is in the large format bottle there. There's one for every 5 people on that one, so please start pouring that one and sharing that across. After that is the Founders Kentucky Breakfast Stout, or the KBS Stout. There's 1 bottle for every 3 people on that one. And then we're going to finish with the IPA from Odell Brewing. So as you guys are setting up for that next thing, another thing that we talk about for the Brewers Association with craft brewers and all of the craft beer that you're pairing here, what you guys have in front of you are good tasting glasses, but when you go to full, come on. When you go to full glasses, you should look for a glassware chart. We have a website called craftbeer.com. This is for the industry and for the beer consumer. It has a lot of this information on there. In the craft beer world, there's hundreds of glasses out there, and that's one of the biggest things that all of us in the industry face is how do you know what glassware to go with? We've trimmed it down to 5 that will get you through serving any beer comfortably. Because we all know space, glassware washing, that little word called breakage that happens, and inventory are not always things that you can have on hand. Absolutely, if you want to have 100 different styles of glassware, go for it. But if you're going to really put your heart and soul into a craft beer program, these are the ones to get you there. I can't zoom in on it here, but essentially, the resources that are there, again, at craftbeer.com, and you can find a lot of these. These are all free downloads that kind of guide people through that. When you use the proper glassware, you're building the aroma, you're allowing the temperature to happen appropriately, and you're allowing the beer to release its carbonation in the appropriate time. That lines up with the pairings and again reflects on the palate. If you use what is traditionally known as a shaker pint or just a pint glass for everything going all the way through, you're going to tire the beer out, and that in turn will tire your palates out. So you need to work around a little bit and think of, do you need to open something up? Do you need to close something down, or do you need to keep something colder longer? That's what different types of glassware can do for your styles of beer. All right, so everybody's got beer poured there. So we're gonna move into the next bite, which is a duck breast. Duck breast was very simply roasted with a little bit of thyme, salt, and black pepper, and then kind of slowly basted off. It has a little bit of figs on it. This is with the, hey Bob, with the New Belgium La Folie Sour Brown. This is kind of a special little treat that New Belgium sent over for pairing with this, because we wanted to talk about sour beers and what they do to the palates. So sour beer is one of the most trending beer styles out there right now. It's growing faster than 3 years ago. You had to actually talk somebody into getting a sour beer, and now you can't keep enough of them on your shelf. So this is a sour brown. Very classically speaking, if you remove the word sour, a brown ale and duck breast is one of the best pairings out there. In order to go into a sour, and again, this is typically something that is slid to dessert, served with ice cream, served with really heavy fat. Well, we're replacing that fat with duck skin. And duck fat, because you need the fat to coat your palate to protect against the bite that's going to happen from this beer. If you take a sniff of the beer, get a little bit of the aroma going around, do this, take a deep inhale of this beer before you have anything on your palate and just let it settle on. You'll feel kind of like a deep red wine is settling onto your tongue just from the aroma of it. Then the fig that's in there resonates with a little bit of jamminess. It brings it around. This is going to start to bring your palate into a more savory mode. You're mentally going to become a little bit more relaxed in the dining experience. And you have a little bit of a pull of the acid. Now, the reason this beer is paired with fat is so that the acid can come in and cleanse your palate. But you need that fat there to, again, protect it. If you were just drinking this beer and then sat down for a dinner, it would be kind of akin to drinking the juice out of a pickle jar and then saying, all right, I'm ready to go eat some halibut. You wouldn't taste anything. So you need to, again, the whole process is about protecting the palate so you can taste everything that happens through there. Figs just started up. You guys are going to have an absolutely phenomenal season coming up for the stone fruit and figs and berries that are coming in right now. They were great to see at the market there. They're right at their perfect point of sugar and pulling a little bit of sweetness in. And you're should feel at the end of this one a little bit of tingling, a little bit of wakeness. Your palate might feel a little bit fatter or kind of starting to swell a little bit. That's due partly to the sour beer. That's also due partly to, as we go along, the balance of salt in the dish. You have, as you go through and using food, there's two ingredients that can help you with measuring out how you use craft beer: salt and sugar. Salt will make your palate tired and swell up. Sugar will make your palate contract and kind of tighten up. So as you're going through, you think about those two reactions of what you want to happen and how you want to do it. Right now, we want everybody's palates to be a little more relaxed. Is anyone in this room first time with a sour beer? Anyone? A couple people? Okay. How many people are enjoying the sour beer? Yeah. Okay. How many people don't? This is an okay thing as well. Who doesn't like this? Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Thank you for trying it. That means more than you know. There's one of the things you'll see as you go along, a lot of the craft beer styles that are out now, you have to find your palate for it. But trying them and moving along to different things is always a great thing. There are a lot of different sours out there. This is one of kind of the middle of the road ones where you get some of the malt, a little bit of the hops that are in there. It's not cloying enough to where it's really tightening your jaw in. So moving on to the next course, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a beer that has 99% of the time been pushed towards dessert with ice cream and chocolate. This isn't a barrel-aged imperial stout, okay? This is a big beer from Founders Brewing up in Michigan. This is a very sought-after beer, and so a lot of people will take a lot of these beers and play it very safe. You would see this with a chocolate bread pudding, with a vanilla ice cream, with a creme brulee. You kind of see where I'm going with that. Well, One of the really neat things about using food here is to use iron. And venison, which you guys have an amazing supply of here in the UK, has a wonderful component called iron. And when you have a barrel-aged imperial stout that has almost 10% alcohol, and there's a little in there, I'll take a little bit of that. The iron reacts with the components of the barrel aging, the higher alcohol, the deep malt, and settles it onto the palate so that you can start to taste all of the different malts that are in here. In most of these barrel-aged stouts, or even in stouts in general, you're talking about 7 to 9 different roasts of malt in there. Now, if you just satiate the palate with chocolate and ice cream, you're going to taste a little bit of bourbon, and you're going to taste a little bit of chocolate, and you're going to be like, okay, I got to go home now. If you do it with something that has the complexity of cherries, a little bit of sweetness, the iron from the venison, and then there's a little salted potato on the bottom, the potato is going to kind of help build your palate around there. And then for just a little kick, there were some really wonderful little piopini mushrooms at the market. Mushrooms have this unique thing called umami. It's kind of what's known as the sixth flavor component between salty, sweet, sour, bitter. You have umami as the sixth one. And what that does is it intensifies on your palate. It takes it all the way around. You'll feel it on the roof of your mouth, the sides of the mouth, your bottom of the mouth. This is what would serve as a main course. This is where you want to go all out. You want to overtake the palate. You want to have richness, sweetness, fat, salt, a little bit of sour. So for those of you in the room who have enjoyed a beer like this that has notes of vanilla, notes of bourbon, notes of oak, when you taste it with cherries, when you taste it with venison, you move that aside and you start to taste the malt that's in the beer. You start to taste the hops that are in the beer. You can actually start to believe that it's a little lower in alcohol than it actually is. Anybody's palate tired yet? Is everybody still tasting all the flavors you're working through on a good basis? Yeah? Excellent. So when you work with beers like this, they're good to move around a little bit. Get things in. Instead of venison, you could go to antelope, you could go to bison, you could go to a richer cut of beef as well too. You could even go into some forms of seafood if you go into a really, really heavy, really fatty salmon, like right when the season first starts and they have a lot of fat in there. That's something that will bring people in, will educate people on the different layers of the beer. And one of the things you'll see is a lot of the craft brewers right now are asking for this to happen. They want the push, they want the challenge. And then same thing for a lot of the guests that are going out to eat as well. People will go, oh, I can't start with a stout, or oh, I can't have a porter now, or oh, that's barrel aged and it's there. Okay, I'll have that after dinner. And then they get full and they get there and then they don't have it. Well, to start working them into ways with the menu where you get the beer in sooner, that's the way to go. Because then you have the dish on the menu, you have the beer pairing in hand, you go to the table, you sell it to them, they have an experience like this, and they start to learn that there's more event outlets for a beer like this than just after dinner or at dessert. So, speaking of dessert and where we're at, so the IPA, this is the beer that is the most entered beer category in many of worldwide beer festivals, including ours, the Great American Beer Festival in Denver. This is the fastest growing category of beer, craft beer, both in the United States and across the world. You see people gravitating towards pale ales and IPAs. Step over to the culinary side of the world, and you hear this classic thing of hoppy beers don't go with food. Double IPAs don't go with food. Have it with some vanilla ice cream. Have it with a burger. Well, the hoppy beer. And we're starting with very, very excellent example here with Odell's IPA. You've got a medium to high amount of hop, a lot of aroma hop, a lot of dry hop happening here, medium bill of malt. So this is an excellent definition of you could go a little lower and see more hop and less malt. You could go higher and see more malt and more hop. But you can kind of figure out where that's going to ride on your palate, and this is a good one to start with. Who's had an IPA with dessert before? Anybody? All right. Awesome. Maybe a couple. So, carrot cake and IPA. What you're playing off here again is using what is kind of nature's Maillard reaction to work with the beer here and pull the hops in. Because when somebody says have an IPA with a burger or have an IPA with vanilla ice cream, what you're doing is you're overwhelming the palate to the point where you can't taste anything until after you swallow the food, and then you drink the beer and you get the beer. That's not pairing. That's just kind of doing this. Doesn't work so well on the palate. It works, it's fine for hanging out at the backyard having a barbecue or, Tuesday or Wednesday night dinner. But if you're truly having a pairing experience, you want to push and challenge the palate. You want to taste all of the layers in the dish, all of the layers in the beer. So there's a little bit of sweet cream on here. So it's butter, cream, sugar that's on the top. Then there's a carrot cake. This does have walnuts in it if anybody has a nut allergy. Mandatory disclaimer. And then there's a little bit of a toffee sauce on there. The toffee sauce is on there to really drive the hop to the roof of your palate, up in the aroma. Again, going back to going beer, food, beer, trying this, and then using that, the cream that's in there with a little bit of the butter and the sugar that's on there so it's stabilized. You're looking at moving the sweetness around so that it pulls the malt forward and pushes the hop back, and then you've got the cake base that then brings the hop back forward. I see a couple people are enjoying this. So some people have finished a lot of theirs. Some people have a lot of beers to go back and try through there. Couple things we want to talk to, and then we kind of want to open this up to questions because we do want to have an interactive discussion because you just tried 6 beers and 6 foods. You've got both Bob and myself up here to answer any questions as well, too, for American craft beer. But a couple other things to go through here real quick. Also at craftbeer.com, there's a beer and food course that we created and released this year. This is a completely free download. This was written by myself and Julia Hers, who works for the Brewers Association, who's also a certified Cicerone. This is what is one of the first handbooks out there that's written from the basis of people serving and executing craft beer. This is not written by a brewer. This is written by a chef. So it's not scientific. It's what you need to go to a table or have people over to your house or go to a restaurant and talk to people about. It's how to break it down and educate people truly on what they should be tasting in craft beer anywhere in the world.